Hello there. My name is Matthew, and you're watching a SASAH Alumni interview, a part of our SASAH Alumni Outreach project. This project is essentially aimed at getting the insights of SASAH alumni and kind of how they've used SASAH in their post-undergraduate studies or as they've entered the world of work, and what SASAH can really look like for students after they've left Western. And today, I'm joined with Avery Lafortune. Hi, Avery. How are you?
Hey, I'm well, thanks.
So Avery graduated from Western in 2017 with a double major in SASAH and Art History, and now she is finishing up her graduate program in Art History and Curatorial Studies. Awesome. That's really, really interesting and cool. And immediately, I have so many questions because I actually know a few people in SASAH that are in my year that are also taking Art History and that love art. So I think right off the bat, a lot of students will love what you have to say, Avery. So I'm really excited.
Awesome.
So just to kind of, I want to say, prime this interview really well, I asked a very fundamental but kind of hard question that I ask everyone, which is, in your own words, how would you describe SASAH?
So I think the short answer to that question is just that SASAH is an interdisciplinary arts undergraduate program. To go into it a bit more, something that I like about the interdisciplinary nature of it is that it recognizes the connections between different types of knowledge. So instead of just doing a straight English degree, we can take some English classes, but that knowledge will inform our understanding of other things like gender studies or philosophy or anything else. And so it acknowledges these types of relationships, that knowing these different areas, it really enhances your ability to communicate and understand these other areas. And I would also say that SASAH is a very flexible program. At least I know I was in the first cohort, so it's possible maybe it's a little different for people entering now. But I know when I was going through, it was very possible to tailor it to kind of your own interests, and I received a lot of support from the faculty and the director of the school in terms of tailoring it and having that type of flexibility to really make it the undergraduate experience that you really wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It hasn't changed at all, I'd say. That's what people love about SASAH, kind of making it your own and engaging in learning in the way that you want to and in the way that suits you. So yeah, no, very awesome. And kind of branching off of that, so you were in the first cohort, a very special time for SASAH, indeed, no doubt. So kind of, we'd love to hear what attracted you to the program. And building off of that, did what attracted you initially, was that like fulfilled, or that kind of desire or hope, was that something that you saw that really materialized once you actually joined the program?
Yes, so I think what first attracted me to the program, I heard about it on like a Western fall or spring preview day, one of those where the director at the school at the time, Dr. Joel Faflak, he was kind of pitching the program to us, and it sounded very interesting. And part of what attracted me to it was that coming out of high school, I was very uncertain about what exactly I wanted to study, and I was unsure about narrowing down my area or my focus of study. So something that really appealed to me with SASAH was that I could study arts and humanities, which I knew was the area I wanted, but I didn't have to limit myself to one specific area of it. So I really liked the idea that I didn't have to narrow my focus right away. So that was definitely part of it. The other thing too, when I was applying to Western, I applied for studio instead of art history, and I was looking for something to pair my studio degree with, something that would keep a lot of other doors open for me, because again, I was a little unsure about what exactly I wanted to focus on. And I think you can see that uncertainty a bit where I switched into art history after my first year from studio. But yeah, so I really enjoyed kind of the breadth of it. But I also liked that it was smaller class sizes, and it can be an intensive program at times, which is something that I was looking for. Yeah, and what was the second part of your question?
The second part was just if those kinds of initial expectations or hopes were kind of fulfilled or materialized once you actually entered the program.
Yes, yeah, no, I would absolutely say so. I really enjoyed the sampling of different arts and humanities courses I got, some of which I knew I was interested in going into the program, and some were things that were quite new to me. And, you know, through that process too, I was able to figure out more what I liked and what I didn't like, and it helped me to eventually find a focus that I really enjoyed. But I was quite thankful that I didn't have to pick one thing coming out of high school and kind of stick with that the entire time. And I was able to really, I felt like there was room to grow. I was able to grow into it. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed that.
For sure. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that is definitely one of the strengths of SASAH, kind of that, as you mentioned before, interdisciplinary nature. It brings to mind a lot of moments in classrooms where, I mean, everyone is obviously doing their other second major, and we'd be having a conversation in class, and somebody would say, oh, we did this in my English class, and someone would say, oh, we did this in my art history class, and it's kind of that always, I want to say, intersection of ideas and programs that really builds the SASAH classroom and allows us to really pull on a lot of the concepts from different programs and get this kind of holistic understanding of what it means to be an art student. And I think that's really, really cool. Yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely. It definitely made class discussions really interesting, you know, and everyone's coming from a different area of specialty. I remember I really enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. So kind of moving on from that then, now that you graduated from SASAH completely, looking back at the program, I'd love to get your kind of overall thoughts. How do you think it shaped you, not just as a student, but like as a citizen?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So very generally, I guess my overall thought is that I really enjoyed being in that program. As I mentioned, I felt like it was a very productive and very supportive space to grow and figure out my interests and to learn new things and change my mind about other things. And I think that's very important. And I also am a firm believer that I think it's important to enjoy your education and important to, you know, kind of have fun with it and feel very passionate about the things that you're pursuing. So I really enjoyed that SASAH was a place for me to do that. I'm also, looking back on it too, I'm also just really glad that a program like SASAH exists, and that it is a very kind of challenging and dynamic arts program, and it's existing in a climate where a lot of arts funding is quite limited. So I'm quite happy that something like that is available to students at Western. For sure.
Definitely. And kind of on that same thread of thought then, know that you're finishing up your graduate program. I was wondering, how do you think SASAH had prepared you for that? Or what crucial skills do you think you learned in SASAH that were really easily transferable and give you like either a head start or just some types of advantages when you entered the graduate program?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the first things, and this is maybe a very practical thing, but just having relationships with faculty members. So when you apply for graduate school, you have to get a couple of references to kind of include with your application, and they'll write these reference letters for you. And in order to get those references, you have to have certain relationships with faculty members so that they can speak to your academic performance or your character. And so with SASAH, because it was such a close program, there were many profs that I felt I had that type of relationship with, where when the time came, I could approach them and ask for a reference letter, and they were all very supportive of it, and I was very appreciative of that. And I think in larger programs, I think that would be probably more difficult. So yeah, so I was very grateful just for the different faculty relationships I formed, and I think those are valuable even if you aren't going into graduate studies, but especially if you are, they certainly help with applications, but also having that type of relationship too with a professor. You can ask their advice about programs. They're always very knowledgeable, not just about programs at Western, but other universities also. So just having that type of relationship is very helpful, I find, for choosing your program and getting into it and all of that. Let's see, I had another thought too. So in my final year of SASAH, I had this kind of open project credit, and I believe they called it a major research project. And so that was in my 4th year. And that project, I think, primed me for a thesis later on. And so the project that I did in undergrad, it was much smaller, but essentially the idea was that I worked closely with Dr. Joel Faflak, who was the director at the time, and he kind of helped me create an individual study that lasted the course of the year. And through that year, I did a lot of my own independent research, and I cultivated or created kind of maybe like a mini thesis, I guess you could call it. And so now I'm just completing the 1-year master's program, and I chose the thesis stream for that. And I think a lot of the skills that I learned in terms of managing my time, developing my own research questions, seeking out that type of research and doing a lot of independent learning like that, I think it was very helpful to have had a smaller scale sort of trial run at the end of my 4th year of undergrad. And I think that really helped me first of all to know that that was something I enjoyed, and then also to kind of manage my time this year. And it wasn't all quite as new as maybe it would have been had I never been given that that independence and that support that I received in my final year of SASAH.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sounds just like SASAH, honestly. Yeah. Giving students that kind of space to really develop and kind of get a first-hand kind of feel on a lot of stuff that they'd be doing in the future. So SASAH like for sure.
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned earlier switching from studio art to art history. What's that? And I think that, at least from my perspective, definitely, I think it says more so about the switching that your passion is art, just on a general sense. And I think I'd be really interested to hear, and I think a lot of other SASAH students would be interested to hear, how you kind of woven that interest in art into SASAH, and how do you think those two things fit together? Was it like a compatible thing? Did you get to express your love for art in SASAH? And how did you kind of go about doing that?
No, absolutely. I think they're very compatible for sure. And I think that kind of manifested itself in different ways. So sometimes and I would also say too that SASAH influenced my love of art also. Like it really went both ways. And so sometimes that means that course content that came up in SASAH, if it's like gender or writing or whatever, that would often influence my understanding of artworks, or I would bring that knowledge into my analysis of different artworks. And having background in those other areas was actually very helpful for my art history studies. But then also bringing art into SASAH, sometimes that meant that for a lot of our projects, the SASAH projects, the parameters are often very open in terms of how you would like to tackle that project, or what strategy you're going to employ to go at that one. And so oftentimes that meant I was able to do sometimes artworks or more creative takes on things instead of just essays all the time or things like that. And I think an example that sticks out in my mind quite a bit is in our 4th year, we had these kind of cumulative projects for our final, I guess, 4th year lecture class that we had, or seminar class. And so for that class, for my final project, I was able to do an installation piece. And that, I think, for me felt very much like an appropriate culmination of my SASAH education, as well as my interest in art and art theory and studying it. So that, in some ways, I think you could argue that project felt like this perfect little marriage between SASAH and then my other art interests. And I'm very thankful that I was able to to do that for that class. That was something that really meant a lot to me at the time as well as now.
Yeah, no, that sounds really, really cool. I think, as you kind of described it really well, a marriage between your kind of two interests. I think that is definitely something that SASAH offers. And speaking with a lot of alumni these past few weeks has really highlighted that for me, how kind of SASAH really allows us to combine two interests and really build something that we kind of weren't anticipating. As you said, kind of transfer skills both ways. So yeah, very, very, very good insight. And then kind of moving on to kind of what it's like to be a SASAH student. I was wondering if you could share with us your favorite memory as a SASAH student.
Ooh.
That could be anything from classes to discussions to just any experience at all.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, yeah, I know. There are definitely some very good discussions. I think when I look back on my time in SASAH and I think about some of the experiences that really stood out for me, that fourth year project that I mentioned that I did the installation for, that's something that I often think about because in those final classes, everybody kind of presented their project and everybody's project looked quite different.
Yeah.
And so some students made websites, or some had these kind of interactive art activities, or different types of presentations. One of my friends, she wrote and directed a play.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was so interesting because again, the parameters were so open and we were allowed to kind of take the project in the direction we wanted to. And we had that opportunity to say what we wanted to say. And it was to me, I think it was a very important moment where I was able to measure growth. And so I like to think about my classmates' projects that they presented and just how it felt like such a fitting conclusion to our 4 years together. And they really were these culminations of how much we had learned and how we had grown throughout the 4 years. And so I think that final class where we all shared our projects with each other, that's definitely a very fond memory for me.
Yeah. I can imagine for sure. And then I guess the last question that I have for you would be reflecting on this entire discussion, I guess, and your experience as a SASAH student. What advice or what single piece of advice do you think you'd have for future SASAH students or even current SASAH students that may be watching this right now?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to follow your interests. I know sometimes there can be a lot of anxiety about having a plan and wanting to know exactly, if I do this program or take this class, exactly what the outcome is going to be. And I think from the start, like right out of high school, I never had a very clear vision of what I wanted my career to be or which program I was going to choose. And that was something that I very much learned along the way. And I think there can be a lot of anxiety with that kind of not knowing. But so I would say though, to follow your interests, because they will lead you to somewhere that you will want to be. And even if you're not sure at the time what exactly that will look like, again, I'm a firm believer in doing things that you're passionate about. And I think as long as you follow that, then you'll end up in a place that you will be happy to be. So sometimes you have to stick it out if you feel a little nervous that you don't have a plan, but I don't think you can go wrong doing something that you really enjoy. So, and then I guess the other thing I would say too, just in terms of your time at Western, there are a lot of really interesting kind of unique opportunities that are presented to you when you're a graduate student or undergraduate student. And I would definitely say jump on those opportunities. I know when I look back again on my undergraduate experience, a lot of the things that I remember very fondly are clubs I signed up for, or international learning or experiential learning opportunities that I got to participate in. And those were things that, had I not been at Western or had I not been in SASAH, I wouldn't have been able to do. So I'm very thankful for those opportunities, and they definitely enhance the quality of my education and overall experience at Western. So yes, I would say if there's any kind of course where you travel or any type of experiential learning, I would very much recommend those. So they're a lot of fun, and you may not get that opportunity later. So yeah.
Yeah. Very solid two pieces of advice. Definitely second those for sure. And then I guess that's a wrap. If any SASAH students watching this right now that might want to reach out and talk to you, how can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always message me through there. That's probably the easiest, actually. Yeah, there are, I think through the SASAH Alumni network, I'm sure it's quite easy for us to kind of find each other. But I would certainly be open to, if anybody has questions, or if they have questions about grad school at Western also, I'd definitely be happy to answer those. And I know when I was in my undergraduate and also shopping around for grad school programs, I was always very thankful or appreciative to the people who took the time to answer my questions. And I'm definitely very keen to kind of pass that along too. So yeah, if anybody's interested in chatting, I would love to do that.
So great to hear. Well, thanks again for taking the time to speak with me today, Avery. I really did value our conversation, and I'm sure everyone watching has learned a lot. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay. See you around.
See you later.